participate in the investigations against him. Nobody should get special treatment, and nobody should be subjected to special bias. Each day we learn more information that reflects the double standard that unfortunately seems to be pervasive at the FBI and at the Department of Justice. Just a few examples. Hillary Clinton received a small team at headquarters to conduct her investigation, according to emails released from current FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Contrast that to Donald Trump, who has more people investigating him than investigated the Oklahoma City bombing. Hillary Clinton had an exoneration statement drafted in her case before the investigation was even completed and before key witnesses, including Hillary Clinton herself, were interviewed. Contrast that with the investigation of President Trump, where people who actively dislike the president were assigned to work against him. There are conflicts of interest associated with immunity deals given to Ms. Mills, Ms. Samuelson. No such accommodation was given to Mr. Flynn or the others associated with the president's transition team. The FBI won't tell the American people whether or not they paid for or participated in the discredited and salacious dossier drafted by Fusion GPS. Meanwhile, a witch hunt continues against the president with tremendous bias, with no purpose, and with no end in sight. Tomorrow, FBI Director Christopher Wray will testify before the Judiciary Committee, and we want answers as to how we can reform our systems and practices so that no one gets special treatment and no one is subjected to any special bias. And now I'd like to introduce my fellow Judiciary member, Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. We have a special counsel who is looking into whether there was coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia in an attempt to try to influence last year's presidential election. We know, however, that the Clinton campaign actually paid Russians to try to influence last year's election. The DNC, the Clinton campaign, paid the law firm, who paid Fusion GPS, who paid Christopher Steele, who paid Russians to put together the dossier that we've all now read so much about. So last night we sent a letter to a number of us. I think everyone up here at the podium was part of that letter. We sent a letter to Attorney General Sessions, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, and FBI Director Wray, asking them to make public the application that was taken to the FISA court, that we believe was taken to the FISA court, to enable spying to take place on Americans associated with the Trump campaign. And we will be asking Mr. Wray about this tomorrow, and a host of other issues, I'm sure. But we think was this dossier, discredited dossier, paid for by DNC and Clinton campaign money? Was this dossier in fact used? Was it part of what was taken to the FISA court to allow spying to take place on Americans who were associated with the Trump campaign? If in fact that took place, that is as wrong as it should be. We want to know that, and that's why we've asked for the application to be made public. And as I said, we'll be questioning Mr. Wray about this and a host of other issues tomorrow. With that, I would now turn it over to, looks like, Mr. Perry.
Well, thank you. For me, the question is why? Why are there two different standards of justice? Why doesn't the FBI and the Justice Department have to comply with subpoenas by the Congress for information that the American people need to have and should have access to? Why is that happening? Why did Ms. Samuelson, why did other members of the last administration get immunity deals? And what did we get for them? And why don't we know that? Why is there two standards of justice for those folks, but another standard of justice for the folks in the Trump administration? And if we understand the why, then we can see the what, including what did we get for a laptop that was turned in, right? And immunity was given, and we want to know what was on that laptop. So we're not here to lift up and say that it was okay that what Michael Flynn or Paul Manafort did. That's not the case whatsoever. Lying to the FBI is always wrong. But as citizens, if one person can be persecuted by an instrument of the government at one standard and another one can't, what does that mean to all of us? Should we fear our FBI if we're not in the right political mindset, if we don't say the right things? Or do we Do we have the confidence in knowing that our Justice Department will prosecute crimes, or is this now a Justice Department that prosecutes individuals? And if that's the case, are we no longer a country of laws as opposed to a country of men? Folks, this is how police states are started. This is how it begins. And it has to stop, and the only way that this stops is by sunlighting, by daylighting, by providing the information to the American people through their duly elected representatives in Congress, so everybody can see what happened here, and then we'll understand the why and the what. And with that, I'll turn it over to my good friend Jody Heiss.
Thank you. Grateful that each of you are here. Listen, this is all about ultimately whether or not Lady Justice is still blindfolded, or whether or not she is peeking out from underneath to show favoritism to certain individuals. The more we hear about how the FBI handled the investigations involving Hillary Clinton, the more we understand that she received special treatment, and that is unacceptable. From the infamous tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch to the changing of the scandal from being described as grossly negligent to extremely careless, it is clear that Hillary Clinton has received break after break after break from the FBI. When it comes down to it, everyone ought to be treated equally under the law, regardless of who they are. And this type of incident that has been occurring must stop. So an investigation into the FBI's process and procedures that allow this type of activity to occur must come to an end. We must have justice at this point, and at the same time we must make sure that this type of favoritism never occurs again. And with that, I turn it over now to Andy Biggs.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. One of the great things that in America that made us the shining light on the hill is the very notion of justice and equality. But in this instance, we see over and over again that people are being treated differently by our institutions. And when that happens, that's the breakdown of our society and the breakdown of who we are as Americans. We have now seen that the FBI, and you conflate that with Mr. Mueller's investigation, is a big string that's in a massive set of knots. And few people are willing to take it on and start untying that knot and get us that string of truth. And that's what we're here to do, what we're here talking about today. Appreciate Mr. Gaetz from Florida and his efforts in leading this, and my colleagues up here today. As we get Director Wray tomorrow in Judiciary Committee, we'll be asking about the things that are causing this knot to be preventing us from untying that knot. The secrecy that the FBI is making, that they won't turn over records, they won't answer questions posed to them by Congress. The conflicts of interest, the biases that are there. These are the things that prevent Americans from getting justice. These are the things that we demand must be cleared up. And we expect answers from Director Wray tomorrow. And answers from the FBI and the Department of Justice going forward. When Congress is asking these questions, we're not doing it to embarrass. We're doing it to get at the truth that all of us as Americans are entitled to. So I'm looking forward to Director Wray's comments tomorrow, his response to the Judiciary Committee, and then my understanding is Rod Rosenstein will be there the following week. Now let me just tell you something. One of the questions that needs to be answered is, why are the same people that have mishandled and provided bias to the Hillary Clinton investigation over time, why are they still in this administration? Why do they continue when they have demonstrated distinct bias against this president and this administration? We need answers to those things if we're going to return to be a city on the hill, that light on the hill. So with that, I'm pleased to turn this over to my friend, Representative Meadows.
Thank you all for being here today. Obviously today is not about any one issue. It's about Lady Justice and the fact that she should wear a blindfold and no one should get a special pass or a special way to be investigated, as we know has now happened within the FBI. It is time that we get to the bottom of it. And I call on Attorney General Sessions. It is time for him to show the type of leadership to make sure the American people get the answers they deserve. Because we cannot allow the highest law enforcement agency in the land to actually be in a situation where they allow partisanship to determine who is actually not only guilty or innocent, but certainly we can't allow it to happen when indeed it should be a nonpartisan, non-biased way. Now the question really is, if Mueller was doing such a great job on investigating the Russian collusion, why could he have not found the conflict of interest within their own agency? And so I'm calling on Attorney General Sessions to stand up and start leading, to be completely transparent in the documents, some of which you've heard my colleagues talk about today, is we need to understand what role did the dossier that was actually a campaign document play in the FISA court request. And also, we must understand that special deals for special people is not the American way. It is time that we have one standard for everyone, and I welcome the leadership of my colleague, the good gentleman from Florida, and the good gentleman from Ohio for their leadership on this issue. But I can tell you that time does not improve with this. The time for action is now, and there is a short fuse on demanding the kind of evidence and transparency that the American people deserve. Thank you so much.
This concludes our press conference. We don't want this to become a cold hostage situation. A few members may stick around and answer questions. We thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I was nervous.
Yeah, that comes from I literally cannot feel my hands.